Welcome to WhiskyCast, cask strength conversation featuring news and interviews from the world of whiskey. I'm Mark Gillespie. This is episode number 826 for July 5th, 2020. Coming up in a few minutes.
We're only a 1,000 square foot bar, and so to socially distance everybody at 6 feet and create safe spaces would only allow for a few people.
Pubs opened in England, Northern Ireland, and Ireland this weekend, while their counterparts in some U.S. states were ordered to shut down this past week as coronavirus cases spiked. H. Joseph Ehrlich owns Elixir in San Francisco, and his whiskey bar has been closed for months because of the pandemic. He's not only waiting for local health officials to give the green light for outdoor service to begin, but for city and state officials to get their acts together on outdoor service at all. That's because the city is saying it's fine to go ahead and start sidewalk service, but state regulators have not started issuing temporary sidewalk service licenses, and they could sanction anyone who goes ahead without one. We'll talk about the future of whiskey bars in the COVID era later on WhiskyCast In-Depth. That's coming up along with the What I'm Tasting This Week department, Behind the Label, and more, including a song from the great Robin Laing. It's all ahead on this week's WhiskyCast.
From far beyond the wall comes a whiskey for those who face the oncoming storm and never stop walking. Winter is here. White Walker by Johnny Walker.
White Walker by Johnny Walker. Blended Scotch whiskey, 41.7% alcohol by volume. Imported by Diageo North America, Norwalk, Connecticut. Please drink responsibly.
When you land on something special, you just know. Redbreast, the quintessential single pot still Irish whiskey, and a proud sponsor of WhiskyCast.
Let's get started with the week's news. It's brought to you by Heaven Hill Distillery. As I mentioned at the start of the show, pubs in England, Northern Ireland, and Ireland have all opened for indoor service for the first time in months because of COVID-19 lockdowns. While social distancing requirements are still in place, the recent evidence from the U.S. shows that bars are a major point of virus transmission, and there were reports of, shall we say, unruly behavior in London and other parts of England. The Guardian quoted Police Federation Chair John Apter with what may be the most prescient comment about the issue. He said, "What was crystal clear is that drunk people can't or won't socially distance." In England, the pubs could open up starting at 6 a.m. Saturday morning. And during our happy hour webcast Friday night, I asked longtime British whiskey writer Richard Woodard how soon he'd feel comfortable going back to the pubs.
I think it depends on the pub. I think if the weather's good and there's a good pub garden, a good outdoor space, then you're going to feel a bit more comfortable. But the idea of going into a kind of inner city boozer where we all know what they're like, we all know how confined they are, that is going to take a heck of a long time, I think.
In the U.S., Arizona's governor was one of the first to allow bars to reopen back in May, and this past week he ordered them closed again after the state's coronavirus cases reached new highs. Colorado and Michigan also shut down bars. In Texas, a group of bar owners has filed a lawsuit challenging Governor Greg Abbott's order in late June to close again. The state suspended the liquor license of one Longview bar after its owner refused to shut down. How about some good news now? Gordon & MacPhail has told its contractors on the company's new distillery along the River Spey in Grantown to get to work. Construction was postponed this spring because of Scottish public health restrictions, but planning continued behind the scenes to get everything ready for when work could resume. The distillery is being built inside the Cairngorms National Park and will be able to produce about 375,000 liters of spirit a year when it opens up. No word on the timetable for completing construction has been announced. Meanwhile, the first year of construction work is complete now on Diageo's new distillery in Lebanon, Kentucky. Groundbreaking took place last July for the $130 million project. The distillery is expected to begin production next year, and it will be Diageo's first carbon-neutral distillery, with the capacity to produce 10 million proof gallons of spirit annually, using 100% renewable energy and no fossil fuels. The company also confirmed that Bulleit bourbon will be the distillery's main product and will supplement existing production at the Bulleit Distilling Company facility in Shelbyville, Kentucky. We have a lot of new whiskeys to talk about this week, starting with the new series of rare single malts from Diageo. The Prima and Ultima collection features 8 vintage whiskeys selected by Jim Beveridge, including a 1979 Port Ellen and the last cask of Cragganmore from 1971, before the distillery switched from coal-fired stills to oil-fired steam heating. 238 sets of the collection will be available through a ballot scheduled to open July 22nd. The price tag, £20,000 for the set, or around $25,000. Set number 1 will be part of a Sotheby's online auction that begins August 26th, with all proceeds going to Water Aid. The Macallan is rounding out its double cask series with new 15 and 18-year-old expressions to go along with the 12-year-old double cask unveiled in 2016. The whiskeys are matured in a combination of American oak and European oak sherry-seasoned casks. The 15-year-old will have a recommended retail price of $135 a bottle. The 18-year-old will go for around $330. They'll be available worldwide. Deval Gandhi left the Macallan to join the Lakes Distillery in England a few years ago, and he's created 2 new expressions of the One blended whiskey. It takes the Lakes English single malt and blends it with Scotch malt and grain whiskies. There's a sherry cask edition finished in PX and Oloroso sherry casks, but the unusual one is finished in Andalusian orange wine casks from Spain. Both are available in limited amounts in the UK for £48. That's around $60 a bottle. Elsewhere in England, London's Bimber Distillery has created a special single malt whiskey for Selfridges. The whiskey was first matured in ex-bourbon barrels, then finished in Oloroso sherry casks from González Bajas in Spain. Only 936 bottles will be available through Selfridges at £79.99 each. And while the Open Championship will not be played this year at Royal St. George's in England, there will still be a special Loch Lomond bottling anyway. The Loch Lomond 12-year-old The Open Special Edition 2020 would have gone on sale anyway this month in time for the tournament. 3,000 bottles will be available worldwide, with a recommended retail price of £50 a bottle. And look for a 2021 Open Special Edition next year when they hold the Open at Royal St. George's. On the bourbon front, Wyoming Whiskey has unveiled this year's Wyoming exclusive bottling. Hole in the Wall refers to one of the outlaw trail saloons back during the pre-Prohibition days in Thermopolis, Wyoming, about 12 miles away from the distillery and the county seat of Hot Springs County. 220 cases will be available through retailers in Wyoming. No word on pricing. And Sagamore Spirit in Baltimore is releasing a new distillery-exclusive bottling this week. It's their straight rye whiskey, finished in extra añejo tequila barrels. The distillery is not offering tours just yet, but did reopen its gift shop and cafe this past week. The new whiskey is available for $69 a bottle. Finally, I need to correct an error from last week's show. In reporting on Catherine Condon's promotion to distiller at Middleton Distillery in Ireland, I referred to Brian Kinsman as the outgoing master distiller there. Of course, Brian Nation was at Middleton, while Brian Kinsman is the malt master at William Grant & Sons in Scotland. Sorry for confusing the two of them. You can keep up on the latest whiskey news all week long at WhiskyCast.com. The news is brought to you by Heaven Hill Distillery and its new Larceny barrel-proof wheated bourbon. It's made the way purists love bourbon, non-chill filtered and at barrel proof with a bold yet balanced taste. It's a new take on the old Fitzgerald legacy and started winning awards even before the first bottles hit the shelves. Look for it at a whiskey shop near you and get all the details at heavenhilldistillery.com. Think wisely, drink wisely. If you missed our live webcasts this past week, you can always replay them on demand at our YouTube channel. Wednesday night, Rebecca Jago of The Last Drop and Kirsty McCallum of Glen Murray joined us on the Whiskey Wednesday webcast. And our happy hour show Friday night featured singer, songwriter, and author Robin Laing, along with whiskey writers Richard Woodard and Billy Abbott. And while we don't have live music every week on the webcasts, Robin agreed to give us a treat Friday night.
You can see if you can recognize what the original song was, but I changed the words, and the publisher didn't think it was a good idea for me to record it, so it's not available on any CD, but it's, I won't even tell you the title. I don't know if it has a title. It's a kind of a prayer. It goes like this. Lord, won't you buy me a Mercedes-Benz, a great big stretch limo with room for all my friends, and a bar in the back full of good malts and blends. Oh Lord, won't you buy me a Mercedes-Benz? Hey Lord, won't you buy me a night on the town? My friends are all wusses, they always let me down. So prove that you love me and buy the next round. Oh Lord, won't you buy me a night on the town? Hey Lord, won't you buy me a bottle of Black Bowmore? Just you and me, Lord, we'll double lock the door. The devil will be jealous, but him we can ignore. Oh Lord, won't you buy me a bottle of Black Bowmore? Then Lord, won't you buy me my own whiskey cask? You say you can do anything, I'm taking you to task. A barrel or a hoggy, that's the last thing I'll ask. Oh Lord, won't you buy me my own whiskey cask? In fact, Lord, why won't you buy me a whole distillery? My liver might suffer, but my soul will be set free, and I'll be in heaven if you make it all tax-free. Oh Lord, won't you buy me a whole distillery? Lord, won't you buy me a whole distillery just for me? Yeah.
Thanks again to Robin Laing. His new CD, Holding Gold, is coming out this week. Look for details at robinlang.com. George Grant of Glenfarclas was scheduled to be with us on the Wednesday night show this past week, but weather-related technical difficulties knocked out his internet connection that night. He will join us this Wednesday, along with Brendan McCarran of Ardbeg and Glenmorangie, to take your questions live on the web. We'll get started at 5 p.m. New York time. That's 10 p.m. UK time, 2100 GMT elsewhere in the world, on the WhiskyCast YouTube channel, our Facebook page, and on Twitter and Periscope. Don't worry, we're not going to ask George and Brendan to sing. Time now for the calendar of events brought to you by Catoctin Creek Distilling. Let's start off with the changes to the calendar as of showtime. The Proof Washington Distillers Festival, originally scheduled for this coming Saturday in Seattle, has now been canceled until next summer. Organizers were not able to work out an alternate date for later this year. The Bristol Whiskey and Spirits Festival in Bristol, England, has already been postponed once until July 18th. It has now been postponed a second time with no new date announced yet. Organizers of the Whiskies of the World events in San Jose and San Francisco on August 7th and 8th have now canceled both events. They'll try again next March. And there's no word yet on the fate of their shows planned for later this year in other U.S. cities. Tales of the Cocktail had already canceled this year's event in New Orleans in favor of virtual seminars, but has now moved that online conference until September 21st through the 24th. Woodford Reserve Distillery has now canceled its remaining Bourbon Academy class of the year. It had been scheduled for October 10th. Now, a bit of good news, Whiskey Live in Sydney is back on the calendar after being canceled earlier this year. It'll now be held on October 30th and 31st. However, the San Diego Spirits Festival had been rescheduled for that same weekend. It has now been canceled for this year. Here's what remains on the schedule as of now for the coming weeks. The Taipei Whiskey Club will still hold its Harmony Home Charity Tasting this Saturday in Taipei, Taiwan. Moonshine University in Louisville, Kentucky will host a Stave and Thief Society Executive Bourbon Steward course on the 17th. Belfast Whiskey Week events will take place online July 24th through August 1st. The Scotch Whisky Experience in Edinburgh, Scotland has a Scotch Whisky Training School class planned for August 4th. And as of now, the Beer, Bourbon, and Barbecue Festival in Cary, North Carolina is still on for August 7th and 8th. Of course, all of the live events are subject to change on short notice, depending on local public health restrictions because of COVID-19. So please make sure you check with event organizers before you make any travel plans. We update the calendar at WhiskyCast.com as we get details on postponements and cancellations. And we've already started adding event dates for next year as they're announced. The calendar of events is brought to you by Catoctin Creek Distilling, makers of Virginia's most awarded spirits. You'll find their Roundstone Rye at fine whiskey shops in 26 U.S. states and 3 continents, and online too. Visit the Where to Buy page at CatoctinCreekDistilling.com to find a retailer near you. And please drink responsibly.
The search never ends, but it's nice when you can come in for a landing, pause and explore the silky smoothness of single pot still Irish whiskey, matured in the finest bourbon and Oloroso sherry casks. Land on Redbreast, then be sure to pass it on. Proud sponsor of WhiskyCast.
WhiskyCast In-Depth is brought to you by Mortlock. Pub life in many places is slowly starting to come back after coronavirus-related lockdowns, but the lack of social distancing that we're seeing has already forced several states to close bars back down as virus cases spike. Health officials are watching nervously as the pubs opened this weekend in England, Northern Ireland, and Ireland, and there have already been scenes of mass gatherings outside some pubs in London. In San Francisco, local health officials had plans to let pubs start offering outdoor service this past week, but pulled back after COVID cases spiked elsewhere in California, and state officials ordered bars in 17 other counties closed. H. Joseph Ehrlich has owned Elixir, one of San Francisco's top whiskey bars, for 17 years. And right now he's dealing with not only the coronavirus, but conflicting mandates from local and state officials. What's your current status, and give me an idea of what you're having to deal with in San Francisco?
Well, there's a lack of coordination between the city government, the state government, the California ABC, the city Department of Health. Everybody's saying kind of different things, but the mayor has come out and said to restaurants, go ahead out and open out into the streets and the sidewalks. The biggest issue there was that the Department of Public Works that controls the permitting for operating on sidewalks has not released any permit changes to that, and then SFMTA that runs the streets has not released anything about how to take over parking spaces to expand outside. And the mayor has just said, go ahead and do it. We're not going to ticket you. But then on top of that, we've got the California ABC that's released all these different updates and regulations, and they are not actually accepting. There's an application process to get a temporary permit to serve alcohol outside, and they have not started accepting applications because it's not clear with the state. So people are kind of going willy-nilly. I think it's a bit of the Wild West out there, where I see bars and restaurants making decisions to open based on assumptions that are not in line with what's been published legally. I'm not jumping the gun on that simply because I don't feel that as a business move, spending the money to do all of that just yet will result in profitable revenue. And I'm not going to get into a situation of increasing my burn rate and decreasing my likelihood of a long-term survival run. You know, cash is king, so I'm not going to make any moves until I can actually make money.
And this is bureaucracy at its finest.
Absolutely.
What do you think it's going to be like when you are able to open up, in terms of bringing your staff back, in terms of the atmosphere inside the bar? What's it going to be like, you think?
It's going to be interesting, you know. As everybody said, it's going to be a whole new world. You can't look at your business as reopening as your former self. There's quite a bit of reinventing that has to happen. Physically, I have mapped out a pretty cool atmosphere outside where I'm going to roll out. You know, I'm sitting on about 10 empty whiskey barrels from past, private purchases. And I've got a bunch of rough cut oak and my Victorian catering bars that are on casters. So I'm going to roll all of that out in the street and kind of create this, this Old West, almost corral, saloon, terrace type ambiance that goes with the saloon, the Victorian concept. And then inside, we're only a 1,000 square foot bar. And so to socially distance everybody at 6 feet and create safe spaces would only allow for a few people. So what I'm doing is designing some movable partitions that will create temporary snugs within the bar. So we may I'm going to try to make it look more like if, I'm not going to spend $50,000 building beautiful mahogany walls to create real snugs, but I will make them Victorian in design and be able to put people closer together, but by creating sections that will give them the privacy and protection. So there will be an aesthetic change to the experience, and it won't be the fun of a packed Elixir with great music and everybody having a great time. It'll that kind of camaraderie and atmosphere will not come back until we can stand next to each other and be social. It's a different experience. It's more like a chill pub than, a party. And that's just going to be the nature of it until we are allowed to hang out together again.
Do you think we'll ever actually get back to the old normal, or are we going to have to adjust to this new normal from now on?
I think that's a science and health question, I'm not one to, I don't like the idea of government mandated vaccines and living in this Orwellian world where we have to take a pill or get a shot before we can go anywhere. And so, I think from perspective of how does a pandemic go away? You look at the Black Plague. When did it go away? When everyone was dead? I don't know how that's going to play out on a scientific level, and that's really going to dictate whether or not we can actually hang out. You can put 80, 100 people in a room together, having a great time and not getting sick.
How's your bar staff holding up during this? What have you been able to do to keep them occupied, or did you have to furlough everybody?
I had to furlough everyone, and we've been running a delivery business. So we're basically, a glorified liquor store. but I have a cocktail mixer company that I'm a part of called Fresh Victor, and we make fresh juice-based, all clean label cocktail mixers that we had been growing in the on-premise across the country with big accounts like Disney Epcot Center, and I had just opened up some deals at the Wynn and the Cosmopolitan and the MGM, the Park MGM. So we were growing quite well as a solution for fresh cocktail base for big chain bars, restaurants, hotels, events. And then, of course, just as all that was taking off, this hit. And so we made a quick pivot to a consumer product, which we now sell direct to consumers through our website. And I created my whole Elixir delivery service beyond selling through a vast amount of my whiskey inventory. I created these cocktail kits based on our Fresh Victor line. So we have a wide variety of kits available that you can make home. When you pair it with our 64-ounce bottle, it makes about 20 to 24 cocktails. And now with the 16-ounce package, we have mini kits that make 5 to 8 cocktails. And those kits have been what have really been selling quite well and keeping the staff engaged in getting out and actually seeing customers. Like our good majority of our Elixir delivery customers are our regular business that, that customers have been great in conveying through emails when they put in their orders saying, we really miss you guys. We can't wait to get back to Elixir, and we miss our Elixir drinks. And so it's been a very nice way to stay engaged with the customer base. I've been doing Zoom meetings and calls. We did a happy hour last week with the team and got to check in with everybody and talk about what we are looking at on a management level as to phased rollouts and different things we're doing. We've been doing virtual cocktail classes and whiskey tastings. I'm doing this coming Monday. I'm doing a blind whiskey tasting of independent bottlers. So just last night I was in the bar filling up flights of 2-ounce bottles with six different independent bottlers, and that's going to be. We've done a couple of them already, and we were doing them live prior to the shutdown. And it's just been a great, fun way to introduce people to not only the phenomenal opportunities in independent bottlers, but doing it blind and, seeing, oh, well, you didn't know that Kalila 8-year was not a 20-year, or that, it's just kind of really interesting and fun to do that kind of blind tasting connection with people. And so I'm trying to get the staff involved in doing those things as well. They were all excited to get back to work. They've been doing cocktail competitions and online trainings, and the industry has been great at stepping up to keep bartenders engaged. And fortunately, my staff has done that, and I can't wait to get them all back together and get in the bar and be a bar team again.
Have you been given any idea when you might be able to reopen?
They've allowed, in California, we've got two different licenses for spirits, a 47, which is a restaurant with full liquor, and then a 48, which is full liquor without food, which is what I have. And so they've made some adjustments to allow 48s to bars to operate like restaurants, which we have to do in order to serve cocktails and such. And then again, on the level of them not being completely clear, it's not certain if we're going to be allowed to, if we can operate that way and serve outside right now as a restaurant, as long as we're offering food. July 15th is when they're saying restaurants will be allowed to open to let people back in. And it's also not clear if we operate with that food aspect, if we as bars can do that. So I'm hoping we can, and that's the date that I'm targeting for all of it, including outside. I don't think we will even open to the outside at that point, because at that point, my classroom, which is attached to the bar, where we do all of our whiskey tastings and our private classes and education, I could open into that as well. So by expanding into the classroom and having that outdoor area, I would have enough square footage to actually have everybody spread out and seated and still sell enough volume to make it worth opening. And that's, again, on a business level, what I'm targeting.
When you hear the stories and the predictions of people within the industry that half to 2/3 of all bars in the U.S. could be wiped out by this pandemic, what does that make you think? Is that realistic, or is that an alarmist perspective? And what do you think could actually happen?
I think it is absolutely realistic. Everybody's business model is maybe, the general public might think of a bar as a bar, but, depending on where you focus your energies and how you make your revenue and how much margin is built into each of those programs, your profitability can be vastly different from the next person. And then when you put your expense structure on the table, I own the real estate at Elixir, which was, always, I tell people all the time, it's the best move you can make. And here's almost 17 years later, it is for me, because I have a first position commercial loan that is, the interest is being covered by my PPP loan on that for the length of the PPP loan, which just got extended. So the principal of that portion of the loan goes right to my equity. And then the second position loan that I have on the property is an SBA loan, a 504 loan, which is covered by the SBA for 6 months. So for this first 6 months of all this, my cash flow impact on my location is minimal, and the money that I do have to put out is just going into principal. So I'm in a very good situation for 6 months. But if I had signed a lease 17 years ago, I'd probably have a 20-year lease. I'd be coming up on the end of that soon, and I'd probably have a good rent rate, but who's to say what my landlord would be like? So if you have you see the stories of bad landlords that are not negotiating and are just kicking people out, which I just never understand on a business level. And then you've got some people with good landlords that are giving them 3 months of rent and saying, we get it, we're here to help, and we want to make sure you succeed. So it really depends on so many variables when you're talking about a business that has such thin margins. If those variables go against you, you're definitely going to get sunk. And, just a popular restaurant chain here in San Francisco called Tacolicious, Joe Hargrave that owns that, they used to be a neighbor. They had a restaurant right across the street from Elixir. And he said the other day, he's gotten a very successful business model. He said, if we go under, everyone's going to go under. And it's true. Like, if you've got a good model in place and you have some good profitability and you're capitalized and you can weather the storm, you're going to make it. But if you were operating paycheck to paycheck, and you've got tough numbers behind you, you're going to be in a very difficult situation unless you get really highly indebted and you can have access to capital to get through it. But why do that if you don't have the margins to pay it off in the long run? So if that's your math, then you're probably just going to throw in the towel. I would. And that's where it's scary and horrible, because that's really a good percentage of the industry is in that situation.
What's the best lesson you've learned from this that you'll take going forward?
Well, again, I'm approaching my 17-year anniversary here in November. So I've been at it a while, and I always say I'm always working on Elixir. I opened in 2003, and I'm not done opening. I'm always improving, whether it's marketing programs or the whiskey collection or the cocktail program or physical improvements to the bar. I'm always acquiring things, and I still see spaces on the wall. I'm like, ooh, there's a little 5x5 space over there I could fill. I'm always looking for just the right thing to put in there. And, my idea with that is you walk into a grand old pub in Dublin that's been there a few hundred years, and it takes some time to establish those things. And with Elixir, I'm the 12th proprietor since 1858 in 161 years. And it's been a lot of different things, but I'm the one that stripped it down, restored it, and brought back every other story since 1858 and wrapped it all into one package that hopefully will remain well beyond my time, so that it, I don't, maybe it changes names and it's not Elixir again, but I was hoping to establish something that is truly tells the history and accentuates the historic properties of Elixir, but also creates something that has longevity and will outlast me, and hopefully if I hand this down to my daughter, and creates a legacy like that. So this whole situation has prompted me to reinvent how that's going to happen, and it's shaken everything I do to the core, to look at every process, every motivation, and every program that we have, and say, well, how is this, each one of these different marketing programs, how is our whiskey program going to change? How are we going to take what we've learned in this time from the delivery business and the retailing and all this, and turn it into a new experience that is going to be actually have us come out of this thriving with new revenue streams that are sustainable, like the virtual events. And those are actually really quite fun. Doing a cocktail class for people when they're actually in their kitchen or at their home bar, and they can hold up a bottle and say, well, you said to get this, but I didn't have this at the liquor store, so I got this. What do you think of it? And be able to give them direct feedback is quite a different thing from sitting in a room full of people and saying, when you go home to your home bar and you're going to do this, this is what you want to do. You actually have them at their home bar, and you're like, no, don't use that, use this. So there's a lot of cool things that come out of it, and everything that I've done with this, every effort that I've put into driving new revenue and creating new ideas has been from the onset with the concept of sustainability. I haven't wanted to put any energy into something that would just go away when this is all over. If I'm going to invest time and money into it, I'm hoping that it will become a new revenue stream that we can carry forward in whatever the new model is. And so as an entrepreneur, those opportunities are exciting. And, you're forced into it rather than sitting back and thinking, well, what could I do? If you're just thinking, what can I do that's different and new and exciting? It's not as motivating as I have to do this now or I'm going to go out of business. So we'll see what, if hopefully this all comes out as a better business in the end.
Thanks to H. Joseph Ehrlich of Elixir in San Francisco for sharing his perspective with us. We found out the other day that the pandemic has claimed another longtime whiskey bar, the Dundee Dell in Omaha, Nebraska, which has been around for 85 years. The owners announced this week that the Dell will be closing later this month. At its peak, they had more than 700 different scotches behind the bar, along with other whiskeys from all over the world. We wish the staff and management of the Dundee Dell all the best. That's WhiskyCast In-Depth, brought to you by Mortlach, whiskey's best-kept secret. Hidden away for decades in some of the world's most famous Scotch whiskies comes a single malt inspired by an original for a fortunate few. Discover the entire Mortlach lineup at malts.com. The What I'm Tasting This Week department is brought to you by Sagamore Spirit, and we're going to do something a bit different with the tasting notes this time around. I had the chance this week to taste the 3 different single casks of 1970 Glenrothes single malt that were bottled by The Last Drop. It gives us a chance to show how 3 casks filled within minutes of each other can all wind up very differently. All 3 are ex-bourbon casks that were kept together for the entire maturation period under the same conditions. And remember, they were distilled back when peat was used at many distilleries in Scotland that are not associated with peatiness today. Cask number 10586 came in at 45.3% ABV. The nose has a nice maltiness with touches of peat smoke, vanilla beans, dark chocolate, and hints of dried apricots, mango, and papaya. The taste starts off light and fruity at first, followed by a nice balance of spices, barley sugar, and just a hint of smoke. The finish has a gentle kiss of peat smoke, along with dark chocolate and a touch of spices. Overall, it's luscious and vibrant with a gentle smokiness. I'm scoring cask 10586 a 96. Now, cask number 10588 wound up at 44.1% ABV. The nose on this one has notes of orange marmalade, vanilla beans, touches of maltiness, and a hint of smoke, along with a bit of Manuka honey. The taste has a great fruity character with apricots and orange peel, along with touches of oak tannins, vanilla beans, barley sugar, and a subtle hint of spice. The spices, though, take center stage on the finish, along with touches of tropical fruits and just a hint of oak. I'm scoring cask 10588 a 95. Finally, cask 10589, the very next cask, was bottled at 45% ABV. It has a nice touch of wet wood smoke on the nose with vanilla, cooked bananas, a hint of sandalwood, and dried fruits. The taste is fruity and vibrant with fresh berries and tropical fruits on top of a dark undertone of oakiness and smoke, along with gentle spices in the background. The finish is very long with gentle spices and delicate touches of fruitiness and smoke for a delightfully complex character overall. I'm scoring cask 10589 a 96, and thanks to The Last Drop for making samples of all 3 1970 Glenrothes single casks available for tasting. The What I'm Tasting This Week department is brought to you by Sagamore Spirit Rye Whiskey and its new Brewer's Select Rye Ale Barrel Finish. It's a collaboration between Sagamore Spirit in Maryland and Sierra Nevada in California, where they filled Sagamore Spirit barrels with their red ale beer, then shipped the empty barrels back to Maryland to give Sagamore Spirit Rye a unique touch. Look for it now at select retailers and get the whole story at sagamorespirit.com. In the meantime, I've added my tasting notes for these whiskeys to our searchable list of more than 2,900 different whiskeys at whiskycast.com. Check it out this week.
From deep in the north, far beyond the wall, the howl of the frozen wind brings word of something new. A whiskey from the land of always winter, for those who face the oncoming storm and never stop walking. Winter is here. White Walker by Johnny Walker.
White Walker by Johnny Walker. Blended Scotch whiskey, 41.7% alcohol by volume. Imported by Diageo North America, Norwalk, Connecticut. Please drink responsibly.
Let's open up the inbox now for your voice. First of all, Wednesday was Canada Day, and I posted a distillery photo on our social media accounts and challenged you to identify the distillery. If you guessed Shelter Point in British Columbia, congratulations. No prizes for being right, but you do get bragging rights for the next week or so. We had a lot of fun with Kirsty McCallum and Rebecca Jago on the Whiskey Wednesday webcast this week. YouTube user Atrixo posted this comment after the show. Great discussion. Thanks a million. It's great to see all these women who are involved in the whiskey industry visible. Now, it's been more than 5 years since we posted the 2-part WhiskyCast HD interview with John Glazer of Compass Box online, but the other day we got this comment from YouTube user Modular Landing. Fantastic video and interview. John Glazer is clearly a very smart fellow who has made a major impact on Scotch. His bottles are everywhere now. I steered away from them initially because of the stigma of blended Scotch, but I'm happily exploring them now. Very well-crafted stuff. Well, thanks for the kind words, but there really shouldn't be any stigma at all to blended Scotch whiskies. we've been trying to correct that misconception for years. Now, it's been even longer since our 2012 WhiskyCast HD segment on Wyoming whiskey, but just to show you that those older videos still get a lot of attention, Kyle Green watched it the other day and posted this comment. Originally from Wyoming, I bought this hoping it would be good. Turns out it is extremely good. Talked to my local liquor store in Florida into ordering it, and it is selling. Glad to hear that, Kyle, and thanks for watching. If you have something you'd like to share with whiskey lovers around the world, you can always get in touch with us on Twitter, Instagram, or Facebook at WhiskyCast. Our email address is comments@whiskycast.com. Let's wrap things up now with Behind the Label, our look at the history, science, and all those other things that combine to make whiskey unique. It's brought to you by Writer's Tears. Justin at Justin83792724, that's a mouthful, on Twitter. Well, Justin saw the results of the International Whiskey Competition announced this week and tweeted us this question. How do award competitions like the International Whiskey Competition work? It looks like it's all Ardbeg, Glenmorangie, Dewars, and Bill Lumsden for 2020 and 2019. Do LVMH and Bacardi sponsor the awards? What awards should we actually look at? Lots of questions there, and first let's tackle that one about contest sponsorship. No, LVMH and Bacardi do not sponsor that competition. There are some competitions where spirits companies may sponsor a particular award within a category, such as a Best of Show trophy brought to you by such and such, or they may serve as a sponsor for the competition. For instance, the International Wine and Spirit Competition lists its industry sponsors on its website. They include not just wine and spirits companies, but still makers like Forsyths of Scotland, glass makers, and other industry suppliers. When it comes to actually judging whiskeys, though, there is usually a firewall between the organizers and the judges who are tasting the whiskeys blind. They may know that they're tasting, for instance, cask-strength single-malt Scotch whiskeys, but not where those whiskeys are coming from. The organizers do know which whiskey is which because they're receiving the entries and preparing the numbered samples for the judges to taste either together or by themselves at home. As for the question about repeat winners from year to year, that's where you need to look at who is judging a competition. Most competitions will list the names and usually the affiliations or the backgrounds of their judges. In the case of the International Whiskey Competition, it takes pride in using the same judging panel every year. And while that does provide a level of consistency in judging, it also means the panel is likely to return similar results from year to year. For instance, the one competition that I judge in each year is the Canadian Whiskey Awards, run by Davin DeCurgamo. That competition is 10 years old. It'll be in its 11th year this coming fall. And Davin and I are the only ones who have been judges all 10 years. He brings in several new judges each year to keep the panel fresh. And, by the way, not even Davin knows which whiskeys are which when it comes to judging. His wife Janet oversees the sample bottling to preserve that firewall. And trust me, Janet does not give up secrets. What should you look for when evaluating how seriously to take a competition? Look at the metrics it uses to determine the winners. If the competition takes an average of the scores from each judge for a whiskey, then throws out the high and low scores to come up with an average, that's usually the fairest result, and it helps eliminate any possibility for peer pressure among judges sitting at the same table. You should also look at how many medals a competition awards in a category compared to the number of entries. The International Whiskey Competition actually does pretty well in this regard, only awarding a single gold, silver, and bronze medal in each category. In other competitions, there may be a best of category winner for the highest scoring whiskey, But, for instance, every whiskey that averaged above, say, a 90 may receive a gold medal, whiskies averaging 80 to 90 points a silver, and below 80 a bronze, no matter how low their score. Why would a competition organizer do that? Let's be honest, in a lot of cases, it is about the money. Not every competition has sponsors to pay the bills, so competitions make their money in two ways. Not all do this, but many will charge entry makers an entry fee per whiskey to take part in the competition. In some cases, it's not much, maybe $50 to $100, plus the cost of a bottle or two to be used in the judging. The International Wine and Spirit Competition charges £140, that's about $175, for entries that are submitted online, and £160, about $200 for offline entries. The more entries you receive, the more money that comes in. But if you make a brand mad by leaving them out of the medals one year, even though they submitted really bad whiskeys, they might just decide to skip your competition in future years, and that can cost a promoter money. Other competitions will go ahead and take that risk and not give the really low scorers a medal. The other way competitions bring in revenue is by getting the winners to pay for the rights to use that medal or trophy in their advertising or on their packaging. Not every competition charges a licensing fee, and some will even supply the medal artwork free of charge. For instance, the International Whiskey Competition charges medal winners a $300 licensing fee to use its medal in both digital and printed forms. The IWSC gives its winners standard resolution artwork for free, but charges for high-resolution versions and printed stickers that can be used on bottles. In the end, just as every whiskey reviewer is different from the rest, every whiskey competition is different. There have been rumors from time to time about competitions where the promoter put a finger on the scale to influence the results, or overruled a judging panel's decision for commercial reasons. But I have yet to see any direct evidence of that actually happening. If it matters to you how a whiskey performs in competitions, then do your own due diligence. But remember, there's only one judge that really matters in the end, and that is you. If you have something you'd like us to look at on an upcoming episode, just use the contact form at WhiskyCast.com to get in touch with us. Behind the Label is brought to you by Writer's Tears.
Writer's Tears Copper Pot, an 18th century style of premium Irish whiskey, blended from single pot still and single malt. Like yourself, it's one of life's treasured rarities, and what's rare is wonderful. Writer's Tears Copper Pot.
That's all for this edition of WhiskyCast. You'll find links for the stories in this episode in our show notes at whiskycast.com. That's also where you'll find links for our WhiskyCast HD videos and the WhiskyCast Tasting Panel podcast, along with the latest whiskey news, my tasting notes, the calendar of events, links for our Whiskey Wednesday and Happy Hour Friday night webcasts, and, of course, a complete archive of past episodes that goes all the way back to 2005. We love to hear from you. You can always get in touch with us on Twitter, Instagram, and Facebook at WhiskyCast. Our email address, comments@whiskycast.com.
When you land on something special, you just know. Redbreast, the quintessential single pot still Irish whiskey, and a proud sponsor of WhiskyCast.
From far beyond the wall comes a whiskey for those who face the oncoming storm and never stop walking. Winter is here. White Walker by Johnny Walker.
White Walker by Johnny Walker. Blended Scotch whiskey, 41.7% alcohol by volume. Imported by Diageo North America, Norwalk, Connecticut. Please drink responsibly.
WhiskyCast is a production of Cask Strength Media, copyright 2020, and comes to you from the charming, yet regrettably dry town of Haddonfield, New Jersey. I'm Mark Gillespie, reminding you that when you drink, please drink responsibly. That includes wearing a mask when you need to. Thanks for listening.